Hello everybody, welcome back to the stream. I'm sorry, V, that you have to leave, but thanks for stopping by anyway. And I hope you have a good day. Alright, so yeah, what are we going to be doing today? I don't know. Honestly. I don't have a whole lot on my to-do list left. There was one thing that I was thinking of this morning that I was like, ooh, that would be a good thing to do on stream. And guess what? I forgot what it was. So I can't for the life of me remember what it is I thought of this morning to work on. So we'll work on other things until that comes back to me. But before we get into it, I want to remind everyone that Alka Mortis is available for wish listing. You can visit the Steam page. It's linked in the description below. I also just released 1 minute ago, scheduled a release of a new tutorial video. Micro tutorial covering instance placeholders, so definitely check that out after the stream. You got to stay here first. So check that out too. What else? I've got the Patreon. Again, if you're subscribed to any tier of the Patreon, you will get 1 week of early access to the playtest, and then the public will get a week of access afterwards. That playtest will be coming up at the end of the month, so 10 days left. I think we're in good shape. I've got some sound effects stuff to tighten up, and I'm going to add as much new content as I can between now and then, but yeah, we'll see. And then I also have the Udemy courses available for sale. These will teach you how to build complete games in the Godot engine, so definitely check that out if you're interested, and all of that helps me out. Okay. Let's see. Hello, the Dollite, welcome. Hello, fledgling game developers. Hello, Polaris, welcome. Good to see you. Hope you have a nice day as well. Bubblegum Lord, hello, hello. Alright, so let's take a look at the to-do list. The to-do list here is almost done. So we reworked Swarm yesterday. I actually ended up finishing that implementation last night. So the way that Swarm works now is that it wraps an ability, and when it executes, it triggers one other random Swarm ability on one other card. So of all the cards that have Swarm abilities, it will choose a random one, and then within that card that it chooses, it will choose one random Swarm ability to execute. So hopefully that's a little bit nicer. Now the one thing that I do want to try is the enchantments here. I never really tested the Swarm enchant. I had to remake it a little bit. What is going on here? Okay, so I need to go to my enchant configuration, and we're going to get rid of all of these so we get a guaranteed Swarm enchant. Good morning, Michael. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you. Hello, Wuius. Welcome. Good to see you. And that's still not working. Training dummy off. We will get there eventually. Okay, here we go. So I should be able to put Swarm here. Swarm, deal 3 damage. So if I do this, boom. Boom. So now that's got a Swarm ability. So if I go into my combat now, yeah. So we can see that the ceremonial dagger is going, it's applying 1 poison, it's dealing 3 damage. The maggot's applying 1 bleed, it got triggered by the Swarm, so it applies another bleed. And then the ceremonial dagger gets triggered by the maggot and does 3 damage. So yeah. That works great. I think there's one minor change that I want to do. Oh yeah, here's what I want to do. To do hide auto resolve button if combat is paused, and transition speed settings to polygon click areas, and add speed labels. That's what I wanted to do. Okay. Look at that. We have work to do now. All it took was for me to goof off a little bit, and now we know what we're doing. All right. So that swarm works, so we'll get rid of this. Put all that back. I guess I could have just discarded those changes. Here comes the cat. What are you doing, cat? What are you doing? Oh, gosh. Oh, this cat. Why, cat? Every time I sit down. Why is it every time? Aren't you supposed to sleep? Don't cats sleep? Don't cats supposed to sleep? Goodness gracious. Okay. So let's do those things that I just wrote down. Hide auto-resolve button if combat is paused. So let's do that. So what I'm talking about here is that auto-resolve button appears when combat starts. So if I go here, one thing I don't ever seen you do is automated testing. Is that more difficult in game dev? I'm a systems engineer, so maybe it's different in game dev. I could see how there could be parts of it that are more difficult in game dev, but you know, if you're building your game correctly, it should be relatively easy to test like narrow systems, like an inventory system or card placement system or whatever. I just don't like unit testing that much, generally speaking. I didn't even like it when I did it at my full-time career. We had, you know, these requirements to do like 80% code coverage or whatever for tests, and then a lot of the tests were just like completely pointless to get the test coverage. And when I'm working on solo projects, generally speaking, I think it adds a lot of time and a lot of friction that doesn't need to be there. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of tests. I will apply them when it's critical, when it's absolutely necessary, or when it's a good idea to have that extra safety there. And I may actually move to doing unit tests for at least a few of the systems in my game as this game gets more complex. But yeah, generally speaking, I think it adds, the big problem is that it adds too much friction and too much time to the process. And I just don't want to spend that time really. Hello, TK. Welcome. Good to see you again. So you could see here that even though I've got the game speed paused here, this auto resolve is still here. And so even though the game is paused, I could click this auto resolve button, which it works. It doesn't break anything. I just think it would be more sensible from a user experience perspective if you've got the game paused, if everything's just stable, you know what I mean? So let's go and figure out, the combat widget is some code that I haven't touched in a long time. So here's the combat widget. This has probably the most complex, not complex, but yeah, maybe complex scene tree in the whole game. Auto resolve clickable control. So let's take a look at this. Show auto resolve, hide auto resolve. Okay, so where is this done? Change to speed disk. Hide auto resolve. Change to combat. Okay. So I think what I need to do here, how do I listen for game speed? Game speed manager, here we go. All right, speed tier, do I have signals here? Game speed changed, event handler. Paused event handler. resumed event handler. So where's this paused being set? Emit signal paused. Okay. All right. So I should be able to get this. Game Speed Manager instance. So if I go to my combat widget here, I should be able to do Game Speed Manager dot instance dot connect Game Speed Manager signal name Game Speed changed. Actually, I don't need that. Let's do paused. On game speed paused. Resumed on game speed resumed. Okay. So then down here, private void on game speed paused. We are going to do hide auto resolve. Private void on game speed resumed. Hide auto resolve. Now, where am I actually setting this speed tier here? Rotate to speed. On combat started set. Okay, yeah. I think this will work. Good night at Seoul. Welcome. Good to see you again. I think you've been here. I don't know. I can't read your name. I'm sorry, but I think I recognize the profile picture. But yeah, welcome. Welcome to the stream. Got all kinds of viewers from around the world. Got some people in Germany, Australia, Brazil, Korea. Let's see. So I need to go to a combat now to test that. Okay. Just sell all these. Go to the combat. All right, so let's see what happens here. So we'll put this here, put that there. Hello, hello. Welcome back to the stream. Okay, so if I pause that, the auto resolve should go away. And if I resume, it didn't work. That's because this needs to say show auto resolve. Okay. Let's try it again. Of course, I did it wrong the first time. You can never do it right the first time. It's not how game development goes. Always got to do it wrong the first time and then you can fix it. Okay, hold on. The cat is being a diva. Okay. I gotta fix that too. It's kind of annoying that gets auto-dismissed when you're trying to do something with your board, but I don't really know what to do about that at the moment. So I pause that, resume, pause, resume, pause, resume, pause, resume. And auto-resolve, there we go. Okay. What happens if I pause it here? Is that going to break anything? So I should switch back to combat, and then I can just put this here. Oh wait, was that? I wasn't paying attention. Let me try this again. So let's go here. And what I'm looking for is if I die here, So that goes away. Oh, guess I didn't die. Let's go here. So I turn this on and I go to die. Then I switch this back. And then I do this. Is this going to stay on the paused here? Oh, it is. But it's changing the speed. Interesting. Why is that happening? So that's a little bit of a bug. Set speed tier. Rotate to speed. Ah. On combat started. Set speed tier, previous speed tier. I think I need to redo this a little bit. I think I need to change this a little bit. I think what I need to do is I need to game speed. I need to respond to the game speed manager changes because the speed of the game could be changed from outside the combat disk. So I need to respond. Signal name, game speed changed, callable dot from on game speed changed. Oops. This needs to be an int, I think. I don't know. I haven't worked on this code in a while, but we'll try it. Private void on game speed changed into new speed tier. We're gonna do, let's do rotate to speed, new speed tier. On game speed pause, we're gonna rotate to speed 0. Then in here, this is going to be purely visual. So we don't want to actually handle the pause. So wherever this rotate to speed is being called, here. So what I'll do is I'll just do private void set game speed int to speed setting. And then I should be able to just do this and get rid of this now. So now this rotate to speed, this is just a purely visual thing, which I can call whenever. But now when I actually get an input, I could do set game speed index. So that will pause or set the speed tier on this game speed manager. And then this is listening for when it's paused or when the game speed is changed. So what that should do is that should be fine now. So that means if I change the game speed from somewhere else in the code, the widget will respond to that instead of trying to just be in lockstep with it. It will always be up to date. So now if I do this, we'll die. Okay, I didn't die. Cool. Cool. Too powerful. I'm not going to die to this one either, I don't think. Oh, I did. Okay. So we die to that one. I do pause here. So I just change the speed. Do that. Go here. Go here. And then I resume. That returns to 1 there. Very nice. Then if I go paused here. Cool. Awesome. Gosh. Okay, so that's fixed. Pizza wearing pants. Wow, that is a pizza wearing pants. Oh, that's funny. Don't usually type in here, just put in the background when I do my own things. Just want to say the game looks really cool. Love the liquid animation, the UI at the bottom. Thank you. I appreciate that, pizza wearing pants. Yeah, thank you. I very much appreciate that. Yeah, the game is coming along. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I think it's getting very close to being something that is complete in the sense that the game design is very, like, very focused and tight experience. But we'll see. We'll see how you guys feel about the playtest. I just had somebody playtest the game for me just a day or two ago, and they played for 6 hours, and the build that they played was the old playtest build, so they haven't played with all the new stuff yet. So I'm hoping that that's a good sign. I know a lot of people in the the previous playtest put several hours into just the playtest, and that's without all the content. That's with some jankiness, some confusing elements, a lack of player education, and people are still playing it for 3, 4, 5 hours. And it's like, dang. So I'm feeling pretty good. It's time for game dev once again. Yes, indeed. Welcome back, Jack Daytona. I think you were considering a few days ago that either remove the force close of the menu when exiting an event, or prevent the event from exiting until you close the menu. Yeah, that is still something that I want to think about, because I am wary of adding extra clicks where they don't need to be there. That said, it's possible that I could detect that the player is currently taking an action and not auto-collapse the drawer and then show a button to collapse it in that case, or just prompt the player to close their inventory when they're ready to proceed. But that's a region of the game that's like that code is very sensitive, number one, because it's a little bit wonky, and number two, because there's just like a lot of conditionality there. So I don't think I want to mess with it too much prior to the release of the playtest, because I would hate to break something for the playtest. So I'll have to think about it some more, but probably not going to address before the next playtest here. Hello, Emerson. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, so let's see. Sorry, 1 second, gotta check something. Okay. So we're still gonna stick with the combat widget here. Update combat widget. So there is one thing that I want to do, which is that these speed disks here are using speed disk mask, speed disk segments. Oh gosh. Do you see what I mean? Like, this is just combat disk. So I get rid of that and I turn the speed disk on. There we go. Speed disk segments. So we've got highlight 0, highlight 1, highlight 2, highlight 3. So those are the highlights. And then we have the speed paused route. Oh yeah. So this is a little bit weird, this whole thing. So this whole thing is supposed to rotate, right? But what I wanted is I wanted the moons here to be oriented in the same direction whenever it rotates. So I needed to separate these out into their own routes, and that will allow them to remain rotated globally 0 degrees while the thing is spinning around. So that's part of the reason why I've got all this weird stuff. But the other reason is that I'm using area 2Ds to do the mouse detection, and that is not ideal for a number of reasons, but what I'm gonna do is I want to change this. So instead of speed paused area, I'm gonna add a clickable control. And then I'm gonna orient this properly. So we'll do like this, and then I'll shrink this down like that. this clickable control, this is going to be a click area polygon. So I'm going to add a polygon here. And then what I'll do is I hope I can just copy this polygon from here. So if I copy this value, I go to this polygon 2D. I can't. Oh, wait, here we go. Data polygon, paste value. There we go. So we've got the same exact polygon here. And then what I could do with this is I can just move this over into position there. Then I can make that invisible. So this clickable control, this click area polygon is here. Okay, I think that's correct. Clickable control polygon. Outline target. So now the visibility toggle target. This can actually be, I can add an element here for highlight 0. And we want to disable the outline animation as well. And we don't have an outline target, so that's fine. Maybe I should give it an outline target. I don't know, we'll see. Let's get this done first. So hopefully now what that means is I can delete this speed pause area now. I've got this clickable control. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it under here. We'll get rid of this speed 1 area. Probably going to need to get a reference to these, but we'll do that later. Turn this polygon on and I'm going to rotate this. And then we'll just go ahead and slot this in the way it's supposed to be. I think that's correct. So there's that. We're going to do speed 2 root, same thing. Get rid of the area. Clickable control. This needs to be rotated like so. Perfect. Okay, and then speed 3 root. Delete this. Turn this on. Rotate it this way. Move it here. It's probably as good as I'm going to get it there. Doesn't need to be perfect, but that's all. Okay, all right. So I also need to change this highlight target. So the visibility toggle target here. So this is visibility toggle targets. We need this to be highlight 1. This visibility toggle target needs to be highlight 2. And then this visibility toggle target needs to be highlight 3. Okay, we can hide all these polygons now. Okay. So let's see if that works. I'm going to have to obviously edit some things. I'll just do speed 1 clickable control. Speed, no, this needs to be speed 0. Clickable control. Speed 2 clickable control. Speed 3 clickable control. Okay, mark those as unique names. Okay. All right, I think that is fine. So now what I can do is in these area 2Ds, we're going to change these to clickable control. So clickable control. And then this is going to be speed 0 clickable control. Speed 1, speed 2, speed 3. Okay, so the disk areas. This is an array of clickable control. This is disk clickable controls. Okay. On disk area input event. So I don't need to do any of this anymore. Yeah, I don't need to do any of this anymore. So this is going to become on disk clicked. And we actually don't accept any arguments here. Actually, I will need the index. So we'll grab this. So we've got the index here. We don't need this check anymore. We don't need to do this anymore. So it just becomes this now. which is a lot nicer. And then this area dot clicked. So this will be clickable control, area dot clicked, shape index. Oh. Huh? Oh, that's fine. We'll just do this. On disk clicked index. Cool. On disk mouse. So these disk highlights, these can go away now. So I don't need that at all because that's going to be handled by the clickable control. So that makes sense. Input pickable equals false. So I want to probably do this. I'm going to add a clickable coordinator here. And then clickable controls, add element. Okay, so the clickable coordinator basically manages turning on and off the input for all of those clickable controls at once. So what I'll do here is I need a clickable coordinator. Okay, clickable coordinator dot disable mouse input. And all this does is this just iterates over all the controls that it coordinates and it adds an input lock to them. So that's just a lot nicer than having to individually do that myself. Okay, change to speed disk. Clickable coordinator dot enable mouse input. That replaces that. Okay. Force change to speed disk, same thing. Clickable coordinator dot enable mouse input. Change to combat. Clickable coordinator disable mouse input. Okay. And then down here, rotate to speed. Area, so we're gonna do clickable coordinator dot disable mouse input. Clickable coordinator dot enable mouse input. So we don't want to be able to click it multiple times while it's rotating. Okay. Well, there's only one way to find out if that worked. Let's take a gander. Hello, Rec. I'll just call you Rec. Welcome back to the stream. I think you've been here before. Your stream made me have nightmares with wave function collapse. I had to get it out of my system, so I implemented it in GameMaker, trying to make it in a 3D grid now. Awesome. I'm sorry that gave you nightmares, but wave function collapse is actually like, it has a name that is a lot fancier than the actual algorithm, because wave function collapse is essentially boiled down to, if you have a system of tiles and you have a set of options for what entity or whatever, what thing can be placed in each of those tile positions, then all you do is you pick a tile, and then you pick one of the things to place randomly on that tile, and then what you do is you implement some rules that will remove the options from other tiles based on what was just placed, right? So what you end up doing is you end up actually reducing the set of all possible outcomes for each tile as you place tiles. And then you just choose the tile with the lowest number of possibilities, choose a random thing to place at that tile, and then you repeat that process. And so it just keeps like focusing the possibility space down, I guess you could say. Maybe my explanation was not that simple, but yeah, it's relatively straightforward. It just sounds a little bit intimidating. How are we game dev now? I'm doing well. How are you doing, Evan? What are we up to today? I'm doing a bunch of random stuff. There's not really too many more big things to handle in the to-do list before the playtest, so yeah. Right now we're changing these speed disks to use clickable controls instead of instead of area 2Ds, which is good because I don't want to use the physics system for that. Okay, so this seems to be working great. And if I go to, let me actually see this. Oh, now I can't click it. Why can't I click the one on the left? Oh, I must have done something wrong because I can't click the pause sometimes. Also, this auto resolve should not be appearing. So that's a problem. Okay, why am I not able to click that? Am I missing something? Do I need to do pass for the enabled mouse filter? Hold on, let me look at my Grow board here. Maybe that's why. Nope. Enabled mouse filter is stop. Accept event on invalid click. This will probably be easier if maybe if I turn on the polygons so I can actually see them. Maybe the polygons aren't aligning properly. Oops. Okay, let's see what that does. There are two types of WFC. Maybe the auto-resolve area is overlapping with the wheel. Well, the auto-resolve area should be disabled, so it shouldn't be intercepting mouse events. Hello, Asymmetrics. Welcome back. Good morning to you. Can't wait to play with all the changes. Yeah, I hope you guys like it. Hope you guys like it. Hello, Defected. Welcome back. Good to see you. So those areas are correct. Why is it not? Okay, let's go to the debugger here. Clicked control, pass through control widget, speed disk 2 clickable control. Okay. Turn this off, turn that off, turn that off. Turn that off, okay. So let's try speed disk 0, speed disk 1, speed disk 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 2, that's 1, that's 3, 0. Okay, so I just clicked on speed disk 1. Yeah, so it did not, it said I clicked on speed disk 2. It thinks I'm clicking on speed disk 2. Speed disk 3. I wish I could see this easier. Okay, speed disk 3. Speed disk 0. Is it just not accepting that event? No, it's speed disk 2. So it thinks I'm clicking on speed disk 2. So this is intercepting the mouse event from here for some reason. I thought I fixed that, but let's take a look at the clickable control. Let's take a look at the clickable control logic here. Thank you, Snupbill, for the IDR 10,000. Very much appreciate that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Very much appreciate that with the message yummers. Good morning, Snupbill. Always good to see you. And welcome back, Baron, for the win. There's that debug setting to see hitboxes that help with reference rects. No, I don't think so, because hitboxes are different. They hook into the physics system. I can render the controls. I know that the way that I've set up the Rex, they do overlap with each other. The problem is, that they are overlapping, but because they have polygon click areas, they should be filtering that out. On mouse entered, if has polygon click area, I wonder if I need to change these to pass. Enabled mouse filter is pass. Let's try that. Nope, still not working sometimes. Okay, so that doesn't work. Am I never doing a check for the polygon click area here? Process. Handle polygon click area. Okay, so handle polygon click area. If not is hovered and is mouse within polygon click area. Is point in polygon click area polygon get local mouse position. Okay. On mouse exited. Okay, on GUI input, is this gonna work? If is hovered, right, so that should work. Okay, well, let's do this. Oh, I think I know what's happening. Yeah, I think I know what's happening. So I'm changing the mouse filter for, in order to prevent the mouse from, let me think. In order to prevent the mouse events from being intercepted, what I do is I'm manually handling the mouse enter and exit detection in the process here. And the way I'm doing that is I'm basically just saying, okay, we're going to keep the mouse filter to ignore on those clickable controls until the mouse enters the clickable area. Then we're going to set the mouse filter so that it can start listening for events. But the problem here is because I'm also dynamically disabling and enabling the disk options, because when they rotate, when I click one and it rotates, what happens is it disables all of the inputs for all the disks until the rotation animation is finished. And that just makes it so you can't click on something while it's animating. But then when it gets re-enabled, what's happening is it is setting the mouse filter back to the enabled mouse filter, regardless of whether the mouse is actually inside of the polygon area or not. So I think this would just be as simple as doing this. If not has polygon click area, we're going to set the mouse filter to enabled mouse filter. See, that's not going to work either. On input enabled, on input disabled. Yeah, I don't know exactly how I'm going to fix this. On mouse entered. If is mouse input disabled. Oh no, it is checking that. So if is, where is that handle? If not has polygon click area. I'm trying to think if it would just be as simple as, let's see, process, handle polygon click area. If, I think I can do this. If not is mouse input disabled, or if is mouse input disabled, or not has polygon click area return. Okay. Although that is already being handled there, so maybe I don't need that. So maybe let's not overcomplicate things here. So this on mouse entered will not be called if it's disabled. So I think on input enabled, all I need to do is, because these will be set to ignore automatically. So like in on mouse exited, if it's a polygon click area, it will be set to ignore. So the ignore is kind of like the default state. So I think what I can do is I can do if not has polygon click area, we'll set this mouse filter back there. And then on mouse entered, mouse filter enabled mouse filter. Okay. I think that will work. I don't know, but I'm going to change this back to stop. Let's see what happens. Nice new YouTube short upload, by the way. I'm going to put that on my playlist just in case of needs. Thank you. Yeah. Glad you liked it. Hopefully you guys watch it. Hopefully it gets 100 million thousand views and I can retire off the ad revenue. But we'll see. You explained pretty well. The tricky part for me was adding context so it has more complete set of rules when training to a tile grid. Right, yeah. Followed the Git repository and the explanation from Caves of Cud guy on GDC. Oh, very nice, yeah. Yeah, like, it's simple in theory, but depending on the rules that are required by your game, it can actually be very tricky to pull off. So definitely, I mean, my wave function collapse here, enemy board generator, like, most of this complexity is just teasing out the data from the cards that I need in order to be able to make good judgments about what the rules should be. Did you only change to pass on one of the clickable controls? No, I have all of them highlighted, so you could change multiple. So I think if I change this, yeah, see, set enabled mouse filter on 4 nodes. So you can highlight nodes of the same type and then change a property on them all at once. Random question, you have to optimize your game you previously made. What would it be? I don't know what you mean by optimize. Like if you're talking about Gunforge, like are you talking about rendering performance or like just performance optimization generally? Or are you talking about like how to make the gameplay better? Found the solution. Your area is constantly listening for mouse enter and exit, right? Yeah. Yeah. So let's see if this works. And that area or that auto resolve needs to not show up if we're not in combat. So let me just see if this works. Oh, it's not working. Probably because I changed the default options. Okay. I think that works. Okay, that seems to be working now, so that's great. So yeah, we need that auto resolve to not appear if we're not in combat, but I think this is fixed now. So move speed disk controls to clickable control. Okay, perfect. Wave function collapse. Hello, Brekheck, welcome back. Good to see you. Alrighty then. So what do we got to do now? So that auto resolve should not appear if we're not in combat. Do I have an active combat disk? So I don't have any data about whether I'm in combat or not in here. Fortunately, I think that should be easy enough. So we could do game events .instance.connect game events .signal name .combat started callable .from on combat started. So we got on combat ended. We'll do private bool is in combat. Okay. Private void on combat started is in combat equals true. Where am I actually showing? Change to speed disk. Where is that actually happening? Is this being called from outside of the... I honestly don't know why I'm doing that. On player resurrected. Well, whatever. Let's see. Yeah, I think these should be moved out of the drawer UI and into the combat widget here. So I already have on combat started. So we're going to say is in combat change to speed disk. On combat ended is in combat equals false. And then on player resurrected, we could do change to combat there. Is that just in the game events? Instance, player resurrected. Nope. Is that in the run manager then? Yeah, of course. Of course it is. Run manager dot signal name dot player resurrected. Callable dot from. On player resurrected. So I think there is an edge case here that I also need to handle. I don't need this anymore. Yeah, there's an edge case in here that I also need to handle. But let's see if that works to begin with. All right, so the auto resolve, wait a minute. Show auto resolve. Yeah, let's just put this in here. Well, that's fine. We'll just do it there. I don't understand this. Hide auto resolve. Resolve clicked, on combat ended, on game speed paused. But the auto resolve is hidden by default, right? Force hide auto resolve. Oh, I see. Okay. Was meant to say like less like megabytes in one game file. Oh, it's just an interesting topic since I heard there's a game that only takes less than 1 megabyte in short. Yeah, I mean, it can be an interesting topic, but for me, I don't care. People sometimes get hung up on like, well, my game could use like 50 megabytes less memory, or it could take up 100 megabytes less space on the disk. And I'm just like, people are running around with PCs that have 4 terabytes of storage and 32 gigs of RAM. It's like, it's not really worth my time or effort to try to squeeze every little bit of space out of the game, especially when the total game size is only like, I think Gunforge is like 250 megabytes. So it's like, could I go through and maybe clean up and compress a bunch of files and maybe save some megabytes on disk? Sure, I could, but that is also time. It's time that I don't want to spend on a task that I don't want to do that is not going to benefit basically anyone. So I am going to be a greedy developer, and I'm just going to use your system resources to my heart's content. Because at the end of the day, it's like, what's the difference between 200 and 250 megabytes? If the difference is 8 hours of work, then I'm not going to do it, right? Unless you're releasing on mobile, who cares? Right, yeah. I mean, and obviously, like, as your game becomes more demanding and complex, like, you know, you don't want to get into AAA game territory where you've got, like, oh, this single-player linear game is 120 gigabytes. Like, that's obviously ridiculous, but when we're talking about the scale of games that I make, it's like, could my shaders be more performant? Sure. Could my audio be compressed to save some disk space? Sure. You know? Could I go through and regularly clean up unused assets so that don't make it into the PCK file and so that it's smaller? Sure, I could. But all of that would basically just be, it would be a lot of effort for basically no perceptible difference. So that's why I don't do that stuff. As long as you don't exceed 10 gigabyte, I'm fine. Yeah, it's a good point. It only makes sense if you're working with a ton of data in your game. Right, yeah. But it's like, I mean, Alcamortis, I'm sure, like, I've got a bunch of branches in my shaders and whatnot, and I'm sure that that's not ideally performant, but if this game is going to run at 60 FPS on a 10-year-old laptop, it's like, doesn't that mean it's already performant enough? I actually don't know if that's the case. I should find a 10-year-old laptop and see. But I've got a MacBook Pro, which is not, you know, it's not a weak computer by any means, but it's from, like, the MacBook Pro is from like 2019 or 2020 or something, and so it runs this game flawlessly. So that's a MacBook that is, you know, approaching 6 years old, and it runs this game just fine. So yeah, not too concerned about it. So it's not like should. No, I'm not assuming that you said I should. I'm just, yeah, it's not a concern that I ever have. Even on mobile, I have like 256 gigabytes, right? Alcamortis has potential for mobile. And look, I wouldn't be surprised if Alcamortis runs just fine on mobile. Maybe I need to make a few tweaks here and there, but this game is really not graphically complex at all. There's a lot of shaders going on, but yeah. Hello, Zachary. Made it to a morning stream. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you here. All right. So the auto resolve is no longer being shown when I do the changes there. And then here, I think this is working. Pause that, it goes away. I open this up. I die again. Now, if I'm in the resurrection state and I change these things, the auto-resolve should not show back up. Until I sacrifice something, this will rotate back to the speed, or the combat disk. I do this, and the auto-resolve comes back. Yeah, look at that. Okay, I think that's working. And just to make sure, we could look in here and make sure that this is not doing anything as I go through the options. Good, all right. So, fix auto-resolve showing up at inappropriate times. Okay. Even non-flagship phones nowadays are beefing up multi-cores, more RAM and storage. Yeah, yeah. And the GPUs in phones, too, are getting ridiculously good as well. So, you know, a phone that's like 5 years old or newer, I'm guessing, maybe even older than that, should be able to run a game that's rendering at 640 by 360 with no problems, right? Even if there are a lot of shaders going on. And the other thing about this game is it's not very process intensive either. Like, I don't have a lot of operations in this game that are doing updates every frame. A lot of the logic is like trigger based, right? So like this happens and then I run all the executions, right? So I've got that going for me too, where I don't need to process a lot of entities every frame. I don't have a lot of stuff hooking into the process method. And so that helps a lot too for low-end devices, I'm sure. So yeah, I think it's all right. I don't know anything about shaders. Do they get baked down after compiling, or is it like real-time processing? Yeah, the shaders get compiled. I don't know how shaders work either, but they get compiled and then they run on the GPU directly. I think, but I'm not a shader expert. Hello, Clickertail, welcome. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is I want to add speed labels to this so you can actually see what those things are going to do. So how am I going to do this? I think what I'll do here is I'll add a label here. We'll make this center. Let's do 1x speed, something like that. Let's turn the custom minimum size up a little bit. That should be fine. We'll put this here. Now the problem is this is going to be overlapping a little bit, but that's all right. Just put that there. Okay. So we're going to do speed 1 label. Let's duplicate this. Speed 0 label. I'll just do 0x speed. Okay, speed 1, speed 2. So that's 3x. And speed 3 label. This one is 6x speed. Okay. Okay, so now I think all I need to do for these clickable controls here, speed disk, here we go. So speed 0 clickable control, we need to also add a visibility toggle target to speed 0 label. Then this one as well. Speed 1 label. This one as well. Speed 2 label. And then this one as well. Okay. Let's see what happens. So I go here. That seems to work just fine. Let's see what it looks like when I've got the auto resolve in place. I hope it doesn't overlap too much, but shaders can be compiled, but depending on the implementation, they're loaded on the fly. I'm so down low feeling now. I'm sorry, Neozoid. Sorry to hear that. This is why some games stutter nowadays, is loading a shader for the first time and the frame rate can tank. Right, right. Try to avoid shaders, found out you can run a game without a GPU, but it'll crash if there are any shaders. Oh wait, I wasn't paying attention. Like hot reload, so shaders have their own interpreter. Well, I don't think shaders have I think my understanding was that shaders are compiled, but the compilation may be delayed until the shader is rendered for the first time in the game, after which the compiled shader is cached and you don't get that stutter anymore. At least that's how it works in Godot. Okay, that looks good actually. But I'm not an expert in shaders, so I'm not going to be talking out of my butt here. Add speed levels to combat widget. Okay, so that's done. And we can do that done. That is done. Awesome. Question, when you have a button that move onto the screen, do you allow the animation to finish first and let the button be clickable? Or do you let the button be clickable while the button is moving? In my game, I wait for the animation to finish and then I make the button clickable. And that's just because typically when an animation is playing, there's other elements that are coming into the screen as well. So it's not just the one clickable element coming in, it's potentially multiple clickable elements coming in. And I don't want the player to like accidentally click or bump their mouse or whatever and like select an option accidentally before everything has had time to settle. So I block the inputs until the animations are finished, and then I let the player make their selection. If all shader processing runs on the GPU, that's big. it would divvy up the workload and won't block on the CPU. Look at that next time I'm working them. Yeah, I mean, so I know that the CPU is involved in like having to set the uniforms on the shaders and whatnot. But again, I'm not an expert, so I don't know. I don't know what the relationship is there between the CPU and the draw calls and the shaders and passing data to and from shaders and all that stuff. That should be rare, though. I'd imagine a lot of CPUs have integrated graphics. Right, yeah. Helps with the compatibility for laptops. Borderlands 4 had issues with that. When has a Borderlands game not had issues? Not to throw shade at anyone. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick 3-minute break, and then when we come back, we'll figure out something to work on. I do need to add an obelisk power for the new grow board event, so that might be a candidate there. Maybe we could also take a detour and just work on something random. Maybe add some new content or whatever. So put in the chat what you'd like to see me work on, and we may take your suggestion. Otherwise, I'll be right back in 3 minutes, and we will continue on. All right, I'm back. He hates Borderlands. Get him. Well, I don't say I would hate Borderlands. I don't particularly enjoy it. But aren't regular Godot materials also a kind of shader? Those do not need to compile. Yes, they do. Yeah. So there are all kinds of shaders in Godot, shaders that need to compile, that are not presented to you as shaders in the editor. So for example, particle process materials, those are shaders. Those get compiled to shaders. So if you've ever made a Godot game and you've noticed that whenever you instantiate particles for the first time, your game stutters, that's because the particles are being driven by a shader. And even though that's not exposed to you in the editor, that's what's happening under the hood. And that's true of other materials as well. Because everything's fundamentally a shader. Even if you don't write any manual shaders, there are still shaders that are under the hood that are for, like, you need to have a shader to draw something to the screen, basically. And a lot of cases, that's just a very basic shader, like just, hey, sample the texture and draw the pixel to the screen. And so the shaders that you would be writing as a developer are additional shaders, shaders that you're adding into the system. But there's a ton of shaders being drawn or being used under the hood for the purposes of rendering your game, even if you don't explicitly create any shaders. And that's especially true if you use materials. So like if I go to my fire effect, so let's just do this for a second. What you can do with the particle process materials is you can actually convert them to shaders. So if I click this and I say convert to shader material here, what that's going to do is that actually generates a shader, and that is the shader that runs the particle. So when you're editing the particles through the editor, what you're essentially doing is you're essentially building up this shader with all of the properties that you're configuring in the editor. And then it gets compiled into a shader like so, and that's what gets run to run the particle system in game. So that is one way you could do that. I think you might be able to do this with other materials as well. Yeah, so I could take this canvas item material here where it's got particles animation set. I could convert this to a shader material as well. And we take a look at that, and that's the shader that exists, or that would be created normally. So anyway, that's just how it works. Godot standard material is more like a shader template. It compiles into one shader program per unique combination of settings. Yeah, exactly. Vote for new content. You can usually reuse the same shader if the only thing you're changing is some values or textures. Well, Godot does it automatically for you. Right, yeah. There's also this new export setting, Shader Baker for Godot. Yeah, I have that on for Alchemortis. We will see what happens. Hopefully that will reduce some stuttering. Just check GitHub, and Godot comes with 100 GLSL shader files. Yeah, so there has to definitely be some default shaders that the engine has to use to render. Do I recommend... Anyway, recommend the Godot Shader Bible. So I've seen the Godot Shader Bible posts on Reddit, and it looks very sophisticated. It looks like a great resource. I don't know anything about the person who created it, though, or the content that's contained within, and I'm also not a shader expert, so I wouldn't be able to necessarily give you an opinion on whether the content is good or not. So, but if you're interested in shaders, I mean, I would definitely check that out. You know, I think it looks like it's very well done. It looks like it's very comprehensive, and as long as the dude's not charging like $500 for his shader course, I would say go for it, you know? Go for it. It may be something that I'll do at some point too, just to like practice shaders, but yeah, all I can say is that it looks really good. It looks really appealing, and can't hurt to check it out. Okay, so let's do some new content. Let's see. So, content. We have some options. We can add some new reagents, alchemical reagents. We can add some new artifacts. We can add maybe new enchantments. Or we can add new cards. And also new abilities and whatnot. Headless Horseman, Hag, Gravedigger. A Hag would be kind of fun to do. Let me do this first. Let me take a look at card statistics tool. Let's take a look at the player card tag count. So we have a lot of alchemical cards. Actually, you know what I want to do? I'm going to remove alchemical tag from reagents. I think I'm going to do that. Okay. So we've got reagent, 12 reagents. So we basically have 20 alchemical, 23 minions, 26 ritual. We don't have many weapons. We don't have many relics. So maybe we should focus, if we're going to do cards, new player cards, we should focus on either weapons or relics. I didn't think the conversation went to data files to shader. Yeah. New bosses. Well, I'm not going to do new bosses just yet. That will happen in the future. But for now, because if I introduce a new boss, then I'm going to have to introduce a way of selecting that boss randomly. So that's going to require some additional code changes that I don't necessarily want to make before the playtest. But I think if this playtest goes well, the next playtest afterwards is going to have multiple bosses. It's going to have multiple player characters. It might also have the beginnings of like the meta progression. Because those are the main things that I need to like get done now. But again, it depends on what your feedback is in the playtest. If the playtest feedback is, hey, the game is not as fun as the previous playtest, then we're going to have to go and revisit some of the design of the game, probably as it relates to alchemy and whatnot. But if everyone says, hey, I'm loving this playtest, it feels really good, I played 2 hours and I just have these minor complaints, then we can collect that feedback, address that feedback, and then move on to doing the bigger things in the game. Or not the bigger things, but the remaining big things like the meta progression, multiple playable characters. And that would also be the time to start fleshing out the content a lot more. So adding more event types, adding more bosses, adding more cards, enemy and player, adding more alchemical reagents, all that kind of stuff. Weapons are always fun, yeah. They are. Guest communications is always fun, at least. Yeah. Okay. So let's figure out if we can do a weapon or a relic or both combined. So what do we got? We can do a scourge. That's kind of similar to the flagrum that I did, or the flagrum, however you say it. Let's see. Weapon. What would be an appropriate weapon for the player to have access to? So what are the weapons we have currently? I wish I could filter by which cards are weapons right now. I mean, I could do that. Yeah, I don't have a way of like filtering down cards that are weapons. That's unfortunate. Rusty Spoon applies paralysis to one card and takes self-damage. Interesting. Good luck to the developer. Explosive Flask. Oh, that's a good one. Stream is going to ramp up into a veritable content sweatshop. Yeah. Well, it's not exactly a sweatshop because it's like below freezing outside, but I get the point. Leading up to the release, yeah. The streams when we get up to close to release are going to be really fun, I think, because it's just going to be drawing a bunch of art and adding new abilities and stuff. I'm trying to think of what, so a rusty spoon is kind of an interesting idea. I mean, we could do that. Do we want to do a rusty spoon? Explosive Flask, that has my vote. Sounds like fun. Okay. All right, let's see. Do we want to make it a 1x1 card? Probably 1x1 is appropriate. I have a lot of 1x1 cards, but I guess that's okay. Explosive Flask. We could also do like an explosive barrel potentially and make it bigger. Could also do 1x2. 2x1, 3x2, 2x3. So what I'm thinking is that we could either make a 2x2 explosive barrel card, or we could make a 1x1 explosive flask. I like Rusty Spoon. I like Rusty Spoon because it's dull. It will hurt more. Oh yeah. Salad finger strikes again. Yeah, my mom actually likes that movie. She says that all the time. The spoon line. All right. Well, we're split now between Rusty Spoon and Explosive Flask. Explosive Barrel and Explosive Flask is the meme of never talk to me or my son again energy. Yeah. 2x2 Execution Wheel. Love that movie. One of my favorites of all time. I need to sit down and watch it. I've never actually seen it. All right, let's do this. Maybe we can do both. I mean, maybe if it goes well, I could just do both, but let's see. Let's do the Rusty Spoon kind of sounds fun. So let's do the card creation tool. Let's do Rusty Spoon. And then we can make this, yeah, make it a 1x2, why not? We've only got 11 1x2 cards, so this is fine. So go ahead and add that. Let's go draw some things. Open file, assets, card, Rusty Spoon. Here it is. Load default palette. Make a new layer here. Okay. So how am I going to make a spoon look rusty? That's a good question. Let's do this first. Okay. So now we got to kind of make this look like it's indented a little bit. So hopefully this doesn't go. Hopefully this isn't too bad. Oh, that doesn't look good at all. Okay, and then maybe we'll just add some extra darkening here. That works. Doesn't look great. Well, that's probably fine. Might make this a little bit thinner. Yeah, maybe not. I wonder if I could just make this a little bit more bulbous there. Bulbous is a fun word, isn't it? Make it more bulbous. No. All right, well. We'll just keep it like that, I suppose. I think it'll be fine. I don't know. I don't know. Could also maybe could potentially just fill that in with black there. No. Well, can always flip a coin if you can't choice either of it. Yeah. Hopefully the spoon's art won't be too demanding. Yeah. Cereal grabber. Nice. Hello, Kurt. You have such a nice color palette. Did you use any tools to help you get that? Yeah, I got it from low spec. So I just went on low spec and I just looked for, just browsed the palettes there and I found this one. And yeah. So yeah, I didn't choose the palette myself, but I am doing all the art myself, so. How am I gonna do a rusty spoon? Okay. Now I'd love to do like some darker colors over here, but that's just gonna make it not look so great. Could maybe do something like this. I mean, do I even need... Hold on. Okay, I think that looks probably better, and then I can just do maybe this. Maybe that's okay, I don't know. So now I gotta add just some of these around. Hopefully make it look a little bit rusty. Yeah, I'm just not entirely sure about this inner part there. I guess that kind of works. Yeah, I think that's fine, honestly. And maybe I could even... That actually doesn't look terrible. Yeah, I don't think that looks bad at all. Okay. I think that's decent. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I think that reads as a spoon, so that's the most important part. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The most important part about pixel art is that your art is giving the player the impression that you want to give them. I think it could use some roughness around the edges. Do you do much anti-aliasing to your sprites? I mean, kind of. I'm kind of doing that by placing like these darker pixels in the corners here, but not really, no. Up for wooden spoon, maybe 2 spoon even, if there's any higher tier variant. Take back my comment, it looks adequately rusty now. Okay, thank you. Yeah. The problem is, like, it's very hard to convey things like rusty or shiny with a limited color palette. So I'm trying my best, but I think it's working. I think it's all right. So anyway, we can get rid of that rusty spoon there. Okay. So I think Jack Daytona, you had a suggestion for what ability this could have. Let's see if I can find that. Applies paralysis to 1 card and takes self-damage. Okay. Rusty spoon, turn cooldown, let's do 8. This is a weapon. Oh, we could make it alchemical too. Like a spoon. No, it's okay. Never mind. We'll just make it that. This is a 1x2 card. Rusty spoon. Okay. So let's go to the rusty spoon here. Rusty spoon would be a great tavern name for like a world, an RPG world. Go back to the rusty spoon to turn in the quest. You have 15 boar hides you got to give to the innkeeper because the boars were trampling through the vineyard. And by the way, 100,000 other players also killed 15 boars and they keep respawning, so... A real Sisyphus moment there. Anyway, Rusty spoon. So, paralysis on a card, plus some kind of like self-damage or self-debuff of some kind. Wooden spoon for applying bleed because it splinters. 15 boars would be terrifying to fight. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, boars are not... boars are actually very, very deadly. You definitely don't want a boar to come at you because you will die. You will die. Vicious creatures. Anyway. Rusty spoon. So I don't know if I like the idea of having paralysis, but... We don't really have many copies. So the rat here, where's the rat? So the rat copies abilities. Add composed abilities, copy adjacent poison. And this is a base composed ability. I'm thinking about making the spoon copy... I don't know. Silver spoon gives currency. I'm thinking about making the rusty spoon here maybe copy the abilities of an alchemical card. But I don't know how to... I don't know exactly how to handle that. Let's see. Because that could be really broken. Spoon build incoming, yeah. 20 to 50% chance of being paralyzed upon in battle. Copy ability. I contextual composed ability provider. Get contextual composed abilities. Get all composed abilities. Get contextual composed abilities. So the copy ability, okay. I don't know if I want to make it do some kind of copy, but... Does damage but has a chance to poison self. Oh man, maybe the content is not going to be so easy for this game. Does damage but has a chance to poison self. We could do something interesting, like we could give it some like true damage, maybe. True damage bypasses shielding. And then we could do something like, if there is an alchemical card on the left edge of the board, then apply poison to self or something like that. Like, we could make it really weird, like where you can like avoid the damage to yourself. I like the idea of it having a chance to break and paralyze itself for the rest of the fight. It would need something powerful to make it worth using, though. Oh, that's a good idea. So maybe we give it a good amount of damage, but then it can paralyze itself. Another interesting thing to do would be it could break if your health goes below 50%. Like, that's something we could do as well. The other thing we could do is, like, if it damages enemy shield, it breaks. So it's like you're smacking a shield and it just breaks. That is an itch. Maybe I'll do that. Something along those lines sounds interesting. So let's maybe do this. So I'm thinking we make it deal damage, and then we say if it does, you know, a total of 10 preserve damage or whatever, it breaks. So if it does a certain amount of shield damage, it becomes exhausted. And we can give it a relatively powerful damage output as well. Maybe it does double damage to shield but breaks itself. The thing is, I already have the mace. Oh, that's an enemy card though. Rusts the shield. Coin flip and fails. Here, we'll do this. Okay. Var damage is equal to ability builder dot damage 8. Okay. Put the damage here. Now we're going to do a composed ability. And we're going to say this is going to be how am I going to do this? I actually don't know how I'm going to do this. I want to check if it did. So if it does 8 damage. I actually don't know how to do this. Provider. I'm going to check if it does a certain amount of damage to the shield and then break if it does. Card damage dealt provider. Get damage dealt by card damage type. Get previous turn execution index. History entries. Sum. Get current turn history range. Current history from start index. Okay. I actually don't remember how this works. Card damage dealt provider. Ability type tracker provider. Get last ability execution index. I think this is wrong too. Get previous turn execution index. Number of previous turns to check. Get current turn history range. I think I can do this, but I don't know. I don't remember if this is going to break or not. Let's see. I'm going to have to test this. I think this might be wrong, the way that this is working. Because this goes back to the problem of, like, I don't know how to describe it. So if I have multiple abilities on a card, they're all executing and they're all adding their executions to the turn history. So the damage will get added to the turn history. But the thing is, if I want to do some history tracking, like let's say I have another history tracking ability here. Yeah, I don't really know how to explain this in a good way. Basically, there's a problem where I could read a statistic that was already read on the previous turn, because this is just considering the entire turn. It's not considering, like, where in the turn did this history tracking ability execute, right? So I could potentially get in a situation where if I want to sum up the damage that was dealt since the last turn, I will inadvertently include the damage dealt last turn as well as the damage dealt this turn. But what I really want to do is I want to account for the index in which, or of which, this ability executed, and only track from beyond that point. So in other words, I would start the tracking here +1, right? And so that way when I say, okay, what is the damage dealt since the last turn, I would know, okay, well, I executed this ability during this spot in the last turn. And so we need to start doing our damage tracking from that point so that we're not including any damage that was executed on the previous turn, but happened before the history tracking ability executed, right? So I'm pretty sure there's going to be a problem in here, because I fixed a similar issue with this ability type tracker provider, where I'm actually keeping track of the ability execution index, and then I'm only getting the valid history entries from that point. I wish I had a better way of doing that, because it's a little bit weird in here, but that is something that I'm going to have to check. Let's see, to do card damage dealt provider could be inaccurately summing or fetching damage data due to not tracking ability index. So I'm going to have to check that out for sure. But we'll go forward with this. This should actually be very easy to verify too. Rusty, go over there. Thank you. All right. So anyway, let's just get this working. So var card damage dealt provider is equal to new card damage dealt provider. Damage type dot shield. Number of previous turns to check. We don't care about that. Okay. So card damage dealt provider. So then we're going to do var exhaust is equal to new buff applicator. Exhaust debuff. the target provider, we're going to need a target provider here. Var query target provider is equal to, I'm gonna do something. New query target provider, public static query target provider, self query target, and we'll do new query options, custom filter. I don't think I need this. Dot none. I think that's none by default. So I think if this is going to be self query only equals true, if I'm not mistaken. Query directions entire board. So it needs to be entire board. Okay, that makes sense. So what this is essentially saying is that we want to query ourselves if we're on any position on the board. But if I were to do left edge, like so, then what this would say is I want to query myself, but only if I'm on the left edge of the board. But entire board works. So I could do query target provider.self query target. Okay. And then we got to pass this query target provider in there. And then we're also going to do magnitude, new exhausted debuff magnitude, apply deferred true. That seems reasonable. Okay, so we're going to have the query target provider here, the card damage dealt provider here, but we're going to wrap the exhaust in a conditional. So var conditional exhaust is equal to new conditional ability decorator, card damage dealt provider. No, this needs to be the exhaust here. The condition card damage dealt provider dot get value is greater than or equal to 8. But we're going to do this. Var base damage constant base damage is equal to 8. Var current damage is equal to base damage. Okay, and then we'll do this. Current damage there. And then we put the conditional ability decorator there. Our conditional exhaust there, rather. Tier var scalar is equal to ability scalars dot get damage scalar. We're going to do current damage is equal to scalar base damage tier. Oh, whoops. That needs to go in there. This can just be, we'll just put, like, we can put this const up here. Base damage, okay. Okay, description func. Deals at least current damage, preserve damage. Oh, let's just do preserve damage. If this card deals at least preserve damage this turn, exhaust self, something like that. Okay, let's see if that works. Project settings, we're going to turn on the training dummy, generate test map. What else? We need to add the rusty spoon to my repertoire, retinue. Rusty spoon. Okay. Probably get myself some shut-eye before I say random scribble text. Have fun code and talk to you later. Talk car. Take care, everyone. yeah, thanks for joining Snupbill. Appreciate it. And hope you have a good night. And I'll see you tomorrow. This card deals at least 8 preserve this turn. Preserve. Damage this turn. Exhaust self. All right. So now we need to do the training dummy. We're going to make it apply shield. Let's just do 4 shield, and let's change the training dummy turn to something like 10. Let's see what that does. Hopefully this rusty spoon goes well. Hopefully it does. We will see. Okay. Rusty spoon, here we go. So that's going to hit him for 8. Then he's going to shield. That's going to deal 4 preserve damage. Yeah, see? So it only did 4 preserve damage on that turn, but because it was calculating the damage dealt from the previous turn as well, when it shouldn't have been, it exhausted itself. So that's exactly the problem that I was talking about, and that's the result that I expected. So this is working, the ability is working, it's just the damage tracking is not. So we're going to need to figure that one out. I need to have a better way, a nicer way of figuring this, getting this data out. Last ability execution index. Get last ability execution index. This. So I'm going to have to think about this. This get current turn history range. That returns the entire turn history. Get last ability execution index. If last ability execution index has value, get total ability executions of type. So this is since last ability execution index. Yeah, this is all a mess. I think I need to rethink how I'm querying the target or the history, the turn history. I need to make it just more, I think I need to make it support checking from the last execution of a specific ability better. And then there's a question of like, how is this all going to work with Swarm? Okay, let me write that down. How Swarm interacts with things like ability type, tracker provider, or card damage dealt provider. If one Swarm ability executes on Rusty Spoon, for example, then the card last execution index could be wrong or produce unintentional results. Unintentional results. Same for Mosquito Swarm. So that's another complication there. Because the Mosquito Swarm is kind of doing the same thing. So this damage bank here, this is doing card damage dealt provider. So this is doing the same thing. And so I think if Swarm ends up triggering an ability, That will get added as a card execution in here. Where is that? Execute abilities. Track ability execution. Yeah, so this is tracking the ability history entry there. So that's tracking that. And then when I do something like ability type tracker provider, I'm doing get current turn history range. Or maybe card damage dealt provider is a better one. So we have all these entries. Get previous turn execution index. So this is iterating over the turn histories, and it's looking for where the card was executed at least once. This card execution count is just going through this card abilities executed entry and counting up where the base card is equal to base card. But the problem is an entry will be created when Swarm triggers something. But that's not like a true card execution, right? It's just running a very distinct set of abilities. But the problem is that's being treated in the data as if that was like a normal card execution. So that's not what I want. Like, I need to be able to know... whether the card was executing as a result of its turn cooldown going to 0, or whether the card was executing as a result of being triggered by another card. Now this worked when Swarm was previously, it just triggered all the abilities on the card, because then it's like, cool, that's just very consistent, right? So the last index of the execution of the card will be the last time that Swarm was triggered on it, or the last time that it was, it reached a turn cooldown of 0. But now, since Swarm is only targeting a subset of abilities, I can't say that that was a true card execution that's going to mess some things up. So I think, I mean, the way to fix that, I think, would be to add the initiator data into here. Yeah, I'm going to need to think about this. I'm going to need to fix this up. So going back to a conversation way at the beginning of the stream, this is a place where I think unit tests would be very valuable, because then I could test all of these edge cases with some confidence without having to manually test them. But yeah, I'm going to need to fix that for sure. Yeah, I got to figure out how I want Swarm to work. Oh, there's a bunch of considerations here. The other thing is that so the thing that's going to be weird with the Rusty Spoon in particular is, imagine that I put Swarm on the deal 8 damage, and that gets triggered I think that's going to be weird just generally. So if the swarm triggers the 8 damage and it deals 8 preserve damage during that swarm execution, it's not going to, this second ability is not going to execute. But when it does execute as a result of its turn cooldown going to 0, I guess, yeah, there's a couple ways that I can handle this. Do I want the Rusty Spoon to exhaust anytime it does 8 preserve damage, or do I want it to only exhaust if it does 8 preserve damage during the execution of its normal turn? Because that's two distinct things, right? If I wanted it to exhaust if it dealt 8 shield damage, I think the way to do that would be to roll the damage into this ability as well and group these both together. And then I kind of sidestep the considerations of like what happens if Swarm is triggered on it, you know, outside of the normal turn order, because then the whole ability is just being swarmed, right? And then so those things are grouped together. So I can just see, hey, is the damage that's part of this ability, did that do 8 shield damage or more? If so, exhaust, right? But when these are two separate abilities, then this becomes more so like, no, it's explicitly this turn. Like, is it dealing 8 damage this turn? It doesn't matter how much damage the Rusty Spoon did outside of its turn as a result of being triggered by Swarm or whatever. It's just this turn. If this card deals 8 preserve damage this turn, then that's when it gets exhausted. So those are two different things, right? And I kind of like the way that I have it, because then it does open the possibility where you could trigger the damage via Swarm a bunch without incurring this penalty, because this penalty only applies if it's on its turn. So I think that makes sense. I still have issues with this card damage dealt provider though, but that, I'm just trying to think through the considerations now that Swarm works a little bit differently. I want to make sure, I think it's very important that this game behaves predictably all the time. Because I want to hopefully get the game to a state where people love the game so much that they want to get into the nitty-gritty details of like, how does the order of operations actually work here? And so I want to make sure that I'm tightening down all these edge cases and making them behave very predictably, so that I can surface that information to players later through like an encyclopedia or something. So that's why I'm spending so much time on this. I think it needs to be like rock solid here. So yeah, I'm gonna have to think about this, but I'm just gonna say the Rusty Spoon is basically done. There is that bug where this card damage dealt provider is getting too much data, but I really like the color palettes you used here. Thank you, Shigo. I appreciate that. Thank you, thank you. How many autoload scripts does the game have? I just looked at this yesterday. I think it's 7. I have 7 autoloads, one of which is just a debug helper. So this actually isn't present in the release build of the game. It frees itself. And then I have the audio helper, context helper, game events, visual utilities, announcements, and cursor. So the cursor is not a real autoload either. The reason why it's an autoload is because I want to override the mouse cursor immediately on startup. And so that's why it's a global node. The announcement system is just a way of showing alerts on the screen. Then I have some utilities for managing fade in and fade out with the visual utilities. Game events, that's like my global signal bus. And the context helper is for getting certain context about the game in a global manner. And then the audio helper, again, this is just managing music and music transitions. So I want music to be available from the start of the game. So that's why it's an autoload. Anyway, yeah. Hello, who? Welcome back to the stream. I'm joining a jam. I really want to win. Super excited. 16 days to prep using Godot plus GDScript. Any tips? Yeah, I actually have a game jam tips video on this channel. So if you want to get all my tips for how to approach game jams, check out that video. It's a little bit of an older video, but I think the advice still holds. So yeah, check that out if you're interested. I actually don't remember what all the tips are. I mean, I could rehash generally what the tips are, but the video will do a better job explaining it. You are welcome. You are welcome. All right, so I am hungry, so it's lunchtime. So I'm going to end the stream there. So we didn't get to do the explosive thing, but let me write that down. So let me commit that. Explosive flask. Okay, so we've got that. We've got the explosive flask written down so we can handle that later. But that's it for the stream today. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for being here. And again, we are working towards the next playtest, which will be happening at the end of the month. So wishlist Alka Mortis, and the playtest will be available for the public, but only after the Patreon early access exclusive period. So when the playtest goes live, it will be available to only Patreon members for 1 week. And then after that 1 week early access period, the playtest will be available to everyone who wants to try it for a week after that. So yeah, what else? I think that's it. So yeah, we're working towards the playtest. The game is feeling pretty good. I'm just going to nail down these final issues that I keep discovering and try to make it as good of an experience as possible for you. Explosive Flask became a broken heart. Sorry. Amazing stream. Thanks. I think we will maybe do a bonus stream today. So join the Discord to be notified when I go live. Otherwise, I'll see you back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Hope you all have a great day. And yeah, see you in the next one. Bye-bye.